Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, it's funny how people on the left scratch their head and ask, why is Joe Rogan so popular? They paint him as this vile figure, and they seem perplexed as to why he's so much more popular than they are, but it's actually pretty simple. He's honest, you're not. He's just a real dude, he's the realest of the real. And so it's kind of like a relationship of trustworthiness if you think about it. That's what creates that loyal base. It's not just that Joe Rogan's a swell dude who's great at having conversations in his podcasts, but it's also because people feel as though he's uncorruptible. He works for himself, he does his own thing, he's got sponsors, sure, but he's not beholden to the sponsor, and just in general, he's willing to have the tough conversations, he's willing to go there, and he's willing to challenge power. He's willing to sit down with a politician, not as a bought and paid for 100% shill, but as an actual human being, asking the right questions and challenging the bogus narratives. And that, my friends, was perfectly encapsulated in this latest podcast with John Fetterman. That's Democrat Senator John Fetterman. I mean, only Joe Rogan could make this happen. He brings on a Democrat who's literally actively campaigning for Kamala Harris for president and gets the Democrat senator to essentially admit that Kamala Harris is full of you-know-what. And honestly, before I show you guys anything, I gotta give John Fetterman some credit. You know, even as a partisan Democrat where all his interests lie in, frankly, lying in this scenario, even he was honest enough and man enough to kind of surrender the point. Look, I'm just gonna say this, I'm not a fan of Democrats or their policies, but this John Fetterman guy, I kinda like him. I'm not gonna lie. Let me show you guys exactly what happened. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so like I said, this is why Joe Rogan's so popular. Because in a way, you know, he kinda just speaks for you. He's a guy with this massive platform that, in a way, serves as a refuge for honesty and common sense in a media landscape of nonstop lying and propaganda.
It's the polish of speaking like a congressman, like a senator, like a presidential candidate. But it's this kind of bullshit way of communicating that's inauthentic, that even though it's effective, even though it's polished and smooth, people never get a sense of who that person is as a human being. Well, Trump is not polished. He's not polished in that sense, but you get a sense of who he is as a human being. There doesn't seem to be a veil. There doesn't seem to be this disconnect between a human being and the thoughts. You might not agree with him, you might think he's crass or rude, but at least you know that he's the guy that's talking. These are his thoughts, and people trust that way more than they trust someone who's, you know, polished but full of shit.
Yeah, no, it's that Scarface. It's like, you know, word and balls.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not gonna, you know, and that's you're losing politically if you're telling people to not believe what their eyes are seeing.
Right.
You know?
That right there, that is exactly it. You know what, it kind of fits in with what I was saying in the intro about Joe Rogan, for instance. The reason why people are so loyal to Joe Rogan as audience members is because they know when they turn on the Joe Rogan podcast, when they listen to him speak, they're getting Joe Rogan. They're not getting a mindless NPC talking head drone who's just simply regurgitating the corporate talking points. They're getting an actual human being who's going to say what they feel. And that's the same thing with Donald Trump, you know? That's why people love Trump so much. That's why Trump has a cult following. I wouldn't say that the MAGA movement is a cult, but Trump certainly has a cult following. And I'd say also justifiably so. He's the first politician in my lifetime who's willing to say things, say what he honestly believes, whether the press likes it or not. It's an issue of authenticity. I mean, just think about it. What's the number one criticism of politicians? You've probably heard it your entire life. These politicians, they make a bunch of promises and when they get elected, they don't keep them and they backtrack. They're a bunch of liars. Well, like I've said a million times before, Donald Trump's the first politician to actually say he's going to do something and then actually do it, or at least try to do it. It's no wonder why people love him. And of course, meanwhile, on the other side, well, actually, I don't think I need to tell you. Why don't we just let this little CNN segment speak for itself, shall we?
Tonight, mixed messages. A K-file investigation this hour finds Kamala Harris is targeting crucial battleground voters with vastly different messages on Gaza and Israel. This ad is running in Michigan, which has the largest Arab population in America.
What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
All right, well, it's a very different story for an ad in Pennsylvania targeting Jewish voters.
Let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7.
Different message. Andrew Kaczynski is out front now. So, Andrew, those obviously do sound starkly different, to say the least. Tell me more about what you found.
Yeah, that's right. And this really illustrates the sort of fine line that the Harris campaign is trying to walk here in the closing weeks, closing days of this campaign on the issue of Israel. Here you have two entirely different constituencies, and they are getting two entirely different messages. There are often times these constituencies have very opposing views on this. If you are a Jewish person in Pennsylvania, you saw that ad that you're getting. You are getting that ad that talks about how strong she is in Israel. If you're a Muslim voter in Michigan, you are getting that ad on Facebook that's talking about how she won't be silent on the issue of Gaza.
The constant doublespeak, the constant flip-flopping. I mean, for Pete's sake, Kamala Harris seems to be running multiple campaigns. Her rhetoric changes depending on the district or the city or the town that she's campaigning in. It's the old motto, huh? The old Hillary Clinton motto. We've got public policies and then we've got private policies. And of course, Kamala Harris has been exposed as probably the biggest political flip-flopper I'd say ever. You know, you've heard that term thrown around a bit. I remember back when Mitt Romney was running against Barack Obama, that was a big thing. So many people were attacking Mitt Romney as a flip-flopper, but I'd say Mitt Romney is quite the consistent politician when compared to Kamala Harris. I mean, it's not even close. The literal moment that she was announced as the replacement for Joe Biden, it's almost as if she became a completely new person, a brand new me. Kamala Harris went through a political makeover. Everything that she stood for all of a sudden was out the window. I mean, almost everything. And she credits that to being in government with Joe Biden for 4 years, where her eyes were opened. 4 years standing around doing nothing under Joe Biden's leadership really opened up her mind, and she realized that she was wrong about, what, literally everything? Give me a frickin' break. Bernie Sanders said the quiet part out loud.
Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
It's just about winning. That's it. It's about manipulating the voters, saying and doing whatever is necessary to get elected, and that really seems to be a trend here. Kamala Harris is willing to do and say anything. I mean, just think about it. We're all human beings. We all have our different perspectives, our different moral and ethical codes, and by the time we're adults, we tend to be pretty solid in our viewpoints. We really stand by what we believe in. Could you imagine overnight just completely switching on all of your beliefs? I can't imagine it. The only explanation is that she's just doing what's necessary for her to win. That's it. In other words, she's a prototypical, dishonest, untrustworthy politician. And it's not just her stances. I mean, just look at the rhetoric. She's willing to say anything. She's willing to gaslight the public. She's willing to straight up lie and manipulate, fearmonger about Project 2025 or Donald Trump wanting to sign an IVF or national abortion ban. She's promoting the Liz Cheney hoax. She called Donald Trump a fascist. She's claiming he wants to jail his political opponents just because they have different viewpoints.
Talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
She's totally willing to lie and gaslight the people. She's willing to say or do whatever it takes to get that title and prestige, to create that legacy for herself. I don't know about you guys, but politicians are not supposed to be doing it for themselves. They're supposed to be doing it for the people. And it's clear which politician is willing to take a bullet for the people, not metaphorically, but literally, and which politician just wants the legacy. It's so freaking obvious who's genuine and who isn't, that even John Fetterman can't deny it. And also, kind of a funny note, just think about it. John Fetterman showed up on Joe Rogan's podcast before Kamala Harris did. And even John Fetterman's appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast was an utter disaster for the Kamala campaign. Imagine how bad it would have been had Kamala Harris actually showed up in Austin, Texas. Man, oh man, I've been disappointed with Joe Rogan. I mean, not like I ever hated him or disliked him. I've always loved Joe Rogan. But I've been so disappointed with his stance, refusing to take Donald Trump on his show. But I have to admit at this point, it's all forgiven and forgotten. What an absolutely fantastic job Joe Rogan is doing during this election. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.